Recording in progress.
There we go. Welcome to Camp Open Circle. So we've already read, like I said, if you were going to pick up an official brochure, the Unitarian Association's words, Open Circle's mission and vision statement, and I threw in a little extra with the Green Bay Covenant from the board. So now pretend that I'm your ranger and I'm welcoming you to this camp and I want to give you this personal tour. So I'm going to try to answer 3 questions. And basically, these are the questions I would have had if I was going to go to a camp. Number 1, I've heard that you have all this religious diversity amongst you. How on earth can you be so flexible and inclusive and have a system like that work? Number 2, what's the story of this particular congregation? And number 3, why would I want to be part of this camp? So let me start from the top. How does this unusual belief system function? Well, this actually came from a sermon I probably did a decade ago, and I'm not sure if anybody in the room heard me use it before. But at that time, I was struggling with the same idea. How do I convey to people that we can be that diverse and it actually works? And I was at a short vacation out at Zion National Park, and that was the inspiration for this sermon and for me to get the concept of how to explain it to you. So has anybody ever been to Zion National Park in the room? Okay, a number of people. So you can correct me if I misstate something, but my memory of Zion National Park is it's got a lot of, well, they would call them mountains. They're not actually that high up, but they're the kind of hills that are very impressive, but they don't stick up like high peaked mountains. They've kind of been there for a long, long, long time. They've worn down. A lot of them are kind of flat tops, actually. And so I thought, that's a good metaphor for thinking of religion. Instead of saying, a lot of religious organizations go out there and tell you that theirs is the one, they found the way, theirs is the truth, everybody else is wrong, which is not what we're about at all. And so that, in my mind, was kind of like Mount Everest. They're the mountain that's tallest, and you'd put this big flag on the top of it with this big capital T truth flag out there. The way we think of it is that every religious tradition that's out there was there for a reason. It helped a certain group of people that were very devout, very religious, think about meaning in this world, our orientation to the universe, and frankly, just what's the meaning of life? How does this all work? And so if you think about it, I thought, well, why not have one of them be the Buddhist mountain, one of them be the Christian mountain, one of them the Jewish mountain, one of the pagan mountain, the Wiccan mountain, the agnostic mountain, the humanist mountain, and it keeps going and going and going. And that's okay. And our job in this park is to just explore the trails and check them out and see if there's a tradition or a way of thinking that appeals to us, that makes us feel like, aha, now I get it. I never thought of something that way. And to take it even further, you might come from the tradition that you grow up in. So, for example, I grew up Christian. And so I would probably go to the Christian mountain first and explore it because I feel the most comfortable there. But I've got a lot of friends who do a lot of Buddhist meditation and are deep into Buddhist thought. And I have a lot of humanist friends that have kind of stepped away from organized religion completely, but live very ethical lives. And I have a real interest in all things nature-based, but I don't know much about, and there's so many varieties there, that I might like hike up halfway up the Christian mountain and sit there in a beautiful outlook and look over at the Buddhist mountain and kind of say, well, from my perspective here, what can I learn or take away, or how can I appreciate the Buddhist mountain over there? And I probably wave to one of my friends that's doing the same thing on that mountain looking at me. So that's my idea of how we kind of function, that everybody in the room, if you asked everybody to come up here and do their credo, sort of an I believe statement, there'd be none of them that were the same. In fact, there'd be quite a lot of variety amongst them. So then how does that work? Well, I think of down in the valley, there's always a ranger station, right? And there's usually some sort of a spiritual leader. In this case, it's a part-time minister, me. So I'd be the ranger at the ranger station and I'd meet you there. And the purpose of the ranger station is to function a lot like this fellowship. This is where you come to meet other people who want to go hiking with you, other people who probably come from different spiritual paths that want to share what they've learned. And maybe you go on a hike with them together to see what you find. And so none of us are into climbing to the top of the mountain and proclaiming that we've found the truth and we have to share it all and you have to believe what we believe. That's exactly the opposite of how we function here. So that's the way it works. And the fellowship, when I wrote that sermon, I was kind of big into heady ideas about how can you have religious pluralism like that work. And I didn't talk a lot about the fellowship down in the valley and what is it like when you come together? How can people have such love and respect for each other's journeys that we can just be together all the time? And that's what you find here. Which kind of goes into my next question. What is Open Circle all about? What is this particular fellowship all about? Well, this fellowship was formally founded in 2004. It's the youngest of my three fellowships that I serve, but it's probably the most organized and stable and has kind of come out of the chute really, really well. Because by 2009, they had this building. That's 5 years. That's kind of unheard of. So I think right there, it's a testimonial to the really strong leadership and financial support that this congregation has had since the beginning. And we're still blessed with that today. So from the very beginning, Open Circle, I believe, has been grounded in love, what we're really focusing on this year. Because the original initiative was to make sure that we were a welcoming congregation. And welcoming congregation, if you're a visitor, that's a term we use in the UUA to mean that we're very welcoming to LGBTQ plus. Anybody under that glorious rainbow is welcome here. Love means love. And at the beginning, the fellowship was grounded in the inherent worthiness and dignity of everyone, regardless of whom they love, and then later, as society progressed, how they express their gender identity. In fact, by the way, to get the information for this, because I've only been around with the congregation, this is my 7th year, I interviewed Karen Schuppe and Paisley Harris for a little bit to get some of this. So they were saying at the very beginning, this congregation was very outward looking. Back at that time, if you recall, there was a whole discussion about marriage equality because the Supreme Court ruling hadn't happened yet. And there was a amendment to the Wisconsin Constitution banning same-sex marriage, saying that marriage was only between a man and a woman. And this congregation and the people in it were very involved in trying to have people vote no, because that isn't our value. Unfortunately, it passed. And then a few years later, the national ruling came around. But that was the very first initiative, to my understanding, that this congregation really united around, an act of love. And then a close second has to be a love of a sustainable earth. It's the best option for all the creatures that inhabit this planet. I was told that in the early days, there was a lot of emphasis on mindful eating, encouraging vegetarianism from an environmental perspective. And ever since then and to this day, we are very involved in social justice issues, just not within the congregational walls, but out in the community as well. And I would be neglectful if I didn't point out, if you could see the roof of this building, it's lined with solar panels. And it was also one of the very early projects because this congregation felt so strongly about environmentalism. They did a capital campaign and raised the money quite quickly to have solar panels on there. How long have they been on there, Tom? 10 years, that's right, 10 years. So that's pretty impressive for a congregation this size, especially. So the next love, I think, is love of diversity in terms of religion and culture. And these are some phrases I picked up from talking to Karen and Paisley. In the beginning, when this congregation formed, they weren't even sure if they wanted to affiliate with any organized religion. Maybe they just wanted to be by themselves because they felt like they were that unique. But eventually they came around to deciding to join the Unitarian Universalism. It's a very spiritual community and has been spiritual from the beginning, but they wanted it to be a bit diverse, both intellectual and spiritual. So think of it to feed both the head and the heart. In the beginning, they had a minister that was serving them, Reverend Mary Council Austin, who's actually a liberal Methodist minister. So it kind of came out of this liberal Christian context. So I think I was told that kind of anchored us down into the Protestant flow of a service like you're experiencing today pretty quickly. New people came in and found a loving and supporting conversations. And then at the time, there was a lot, and still is, a lot of religious diversity. There was a pretty strong Wiccan group at the time using the building. A lot of folks have strong Buddhist leanings, and ethical humanist probably is one of the more dominant thinkings in this congregation. But overall, it was very much grounded in the Unitarian Universalist principles that we read together in the beginning. I think another love is just the love of an ideal. It's optimism, eternally optimistic and hopeful that the world can and must become a more just and supportive place. It's just a group of progressive people enjoying each other's company, loving community, or you could say even like souls. And one of the things that they do have is healthy congregation, covenant, and making sure that we try to stay in right relations with each other, which I will end this sermon talking a little bit about that. So my conclusion, my experience of Open Circle, it's truly a place filled with folks seeking to live love-centered lives and thereby live into that vision of transforming lives and the Fond du Lac community. So my third question, why would I want to be a part of this camp? Well, a little digression for a second. This whole year, we're talking about living love-centered lives, and each month we have a theme, and it's the practice that helps us live into love-centered lives. And this month is the practice of invitation. And I'm part of a lot of chalice circles where we work on spiritual exercises. And this is my spiritual exercise for this month. And so this is my practice of invitation. And this is what I wrote. So based on the social norms within which we live in the Fond du Lac community, I think Unitarian Universalists are proud paradigm shifters. And I wish I'd come up with that term myself, but it comes from the First Unitarian Church of Dallas, the senior minister there. But I love that name, paradigm shifters, because we are in a culture that's pretty similar to every other city in the upper Midwest. Certain ways of thinking that the culture around us takes for granted. And we proudly go out there and kind of shift it a little bit. And we're good with that. And so that's what we're really inviting you into. We invite you to come here and live authentically. You don't have to put on a fake front about who you are. Live authentically and center your life in love. We invite you to aspire to live in a sustainable world with equal opportunity for all to thrive. Now, that's a goal. In fact, I wrote in my notes a BHAG. That comes from my corporate career before I became a minister. BHAG stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. So even Unitarianism, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, it was sort of this upward and onward forever that humanity could solve all the problems if we just were at peace with each other and put our heads together. And they wanted everybody to thrive. Well, unfortunately, that kind of got kidnapped by wanted everybody to have a lot of consumerism and have a prosperous life. And there wasn't a lot of attention paid to the environment, or enough attention paid to the environment within the Unitarians at the time. So that's fortunately for all of us changed. And so the BHAG here is that we really believe that we have to come up with a sustainable world or we won't exist. But yet we do want an environment where all people can thrive. So that's the solving it like a Rubik's Cube. How do you do that? So, and it's all about equity and justice and interdependence, which are three of our values. So we invite you to come and be a part of a community that is spiritual but not religious in the traditional sense of either term. Now, I'm going to make some statements here that say we believe, but this is Jim Coakley's idea of what we believe. Because as I said before, if you interviewed everybody in here, no two people would believe the same thing. So please, I'm speaking for myself and my interpretation. We believe in a greater power than ourselves, but have a lot of trouble naming it. Hope, optimism, love, and peace. To me, these are values that we honor, lift up, and worship. And actually, if you think about the definition, the generic definition of worship, it means to honor, to lift up. And so in a lot of religions, it's a deity. And particularly in the United States, it's mostly Christian, Jewish, and then there's God. And you often hear of God of love, God of hope, God of peace. And I think we've just sort of shortcutted it, went right to hope, love, and peace is the value that we honor, rather than think about a deity that has to control us all on that. There's a lot of people that believe in God, but it's a different sense of it, that we believe that there's something helping us all lean into love. I kind of think this is going to sound a little woo-woo, but I think of it as sort of energy fields. That if I'm a person grounded in love, I give off a certain kind of energy, and it is attracted to other people in the universe that also are love and giving off the same energy. And so that's kind of the way that I think I used to call that God, the God of love, and it just sort of evolved in the way I think about it. Our beliefs are very strong, very, very strong, and come from within and then lived outwardly. They're not pushed down on us from above or from without. We don't have a doctrine. You don't have to come here and sign off that you believe in certain creedal statements. The only thing we ask is that you live a love-centered life. And then I would say that we are a people of this world, not the next. And that's kind of by default, because I don't think any of us could agree what the next world is about anyway. So we are very, very focused on bringing heaven to earth, if you will, which is where I believe our spirituality is grounded. Here's a statement the way I think of it. We believe that we live in an amazing place and time, ripe with opportunities to create a utopic and sustainable world, if only humanity could evolve and embrace its better self and fully embrace interdependence. So I'm going to end with the same way that Green Bay Fellowship's covenant ended, with humility. We acknowledge here that we are human and make mistakes. We are a covenantal community. That's what holds us together. We promise to hang together and strive to make things right when mistakes happen. Being in right relationship with those we love and share this fellowship is more important than being right. I'll restate that. Being in right relationship is more important than being right. After all, it's what a bunch of folks striving to live love-centered lives would do. So this is the kind of camp you are warmly invited to. And this message is my spiritual practice of invitation. Amen. Take a moment of quiet. Think about it.